Hey guys, I did want to talk a little more about phase 2 for my job lot cleaning. This is more of the bulk approach to cleaning, so a similar deal with the individual level, but instead just kind of going through more pieces at once and just trying to move things along at a quicker pace. These are pieces that maybe don't need that individual care. Will be good with a 20-minute soak and a rinse, so let's look at how that is accomplished. So for the bulk cleaning approach, I've got a larger bin, a larger volume of water, and we're going to need more soap as well. So just my approach here is going to be putting kind of a drizzle across the top layer, and then I'm actually going to use the filling of the water to kind of push that soap in and get that stirred up a little bit. So I'm going to turn that on. Again, I'm going to be using warmer water. That just seems to do a better job with activating the soap and the cleaning. So yeah, a lot more water. It does weigh a little bit now as well that I've got a couple gallons in here. So this will be really nice for just saturating all these pieces. And then maybe let this sit 20 minutes or so. And it doesn't hurt to give it a little mix around. So I'll be doing a little bit of that before I let it sit. And then instead of doing a one-by-one approach, I'm just going to be doing a scoop approach. So now that these have been soaking, we're going to go from the big tub to a slightly smaller tub. Quick rinse through this fresh water here, and then these will go on the drying area. So I get a handful, couple handfuls worth. You don't want too many in this stage. You know, what we want to get here is just that layer off the top. Hopefully most of these pieces, after I have gone through them, just need a rinse. If I do spot one that needs more attention, I'm going to set it to the side so that I can come back to it. The goal with this stage is to do more Lego at a time rather than just one or two, like that really narrow focus. So maybe getting a handful here, and then before I do that, I'm actually going to go through and see if there's any certain types of pieces that I want to be sure to get all the water out of. Because if I leave this full of water on the drying rack, it's going to take a lot longer to dry out. So pieces like this, I'm just going to give a little shake all on their own. So like some bricks. What are some other ones in here? Like this box would be another one. So these kind of pieces, I'm actually going to go and kind of do another secondary stage of close attention and try to get some of the water out of these. I'm not going to get every single one, but I am going to try to catch a few of them before I take this to the drying area. So just to kind of cover most of that. So once some of the waterlogged pieces are out of the way, I can really get in here now and get maybe a handful where you're looking at 20 to 50 pieces at a time. And now we just want to get the water out of as much of these as possible. What I'm cutting out here by using this bin is the stage where I usually run stuff under the water, and just kind of doing the same thing here with this bin of water instead of running underneath. I think actually running underneath uses more water than this bin does, especially for all of these pieces. If I'm doing that so many times, that water is going to be running for longer. So trying to cut out that step of this process and doing about this many pieces. And see here, this one needs a little more work, so it's going to go back in. and just kind of shaking that out, and then over to the drying area. So what we're doing here is the same amount of time I was spending before on 1 or 2 pieces is now covering 20 to 50. And this is what I have going for the drying process. So just a towel spread out here and this fan. Just trying to get a little air moving across the top. I'm going to leave it off for the video so you can hear me. But you want to have good airflow over the top of the pieces. Ideally, you could also have something that's letting air get underneath, so you're drying it from the top and the bottom. And sometimes I have kind of a mesh rack that works pretty good for that. But even just having them on a towel. Here's another piece that I would want to be sure to get all that water out of before it's drying. You want to give it a good shake to kind of get that out. And, you know, not really deep layers here, but trying to move stuff along too, because I don't want to be waiting on stuff drying for too long. It's definitely a process. Yeah, it's not like, I mean, that's why it's called a job lot. So just bear in mind, if you have Lego that needs to be cleaned and you have a lot of it, it's going to take some time to do it this way. Alternatively, I've heard a lot of people talk about using a technique where they put everything in a pillowcase and then put that in the washer. That's definitely faster, but to me that just seems like it would be so much harder on the Lego. If you have that tumbling around in a washer, if you're using really hot water for that, you might start to get some issues with plates getting bent in there, and it just doesn't sound like something I would want to risk putting, you know, some of these torsos in here. I've seen Lord of the Rings torsos. I don't want to put those in a bag with all these pieces through the washer that just get scratched up all over the place. So to me, this is definitely worth it to go the long, slow route of cleaning, just to ensure that everything is staying in pretty good condition. Definitely takes a lot longer, and it's a ton of work, but this is part of the hobby for me. This time of year in Iowa, it's a great thing to do inside. It's freezing cold outside. There's not a lot, you know, you can run around, especially now, coronavirus, and trying not to go too many places. So yeah, this is actually a perfect activity for this winter. One of the reasons I did look at buying more Lego than I usually do, to have something to work on. And when it's all said and done, you know, I bought 30,000 some pieces for $200. That all works backwards down to less than a cent per piece. And then were I to start selling some of this stuff, or even looking at it in terms of now I have these in my collection, that's about 10 times cheaper than I would usually get it buying new Lego off the shelf. Pieces that only come in a few sets, sometimes from 10 or more years ago, that are even harder to find now. That would actually cost more than 10 cents a piece, getting up to $1 a piece, especially some of these minifigs. So in terms of getting Lego for the collection, or even in terms of an investment, this is still, you know, putting in some time, but all said and done, I think the math works out to where you're still saving money in the long run, depending on how much time you actually have to spend on this kind of thing. And I wanted to address that because it is part of the process. It's part of the job of cleaning Lego, and it's part of a job lot. So be prepared to do this kind of work, to put in this kind of effort, to actually end up with the clean Lego that you want to have in your collection. Remember what this dirty water looks like, as we saw in the previous video. We're going to see that again at the end here. Not in this video, but that's what will be left in this bin once I'm done with it. So I still have 4 or 5 more of these tubs to do, 3,000 to 4,000 pieces each. This tub probably will take 8 to 10 rounds in the rinser tub, and then, you know, trying to find space on the floor to get this all drying at the same time. Best case scenario, working out to maybe 10-12 hours all said and done for the cleaning process. Previously looking at 8 to 10 hours for the initial sort. To go ahead and estimate a time for the final sort, that could be another easily 10-hour project. But even just to get it to the clean stage is a full 24 hours of work. And of course, as you've seen, I've spread it out over a couple weeks initially with the sort, and now coming back to this project after finishing up school and having some free time, spreading this out over a week or two. It's not like you have to sit down and do it all at once. It is something that you can really spread out and work on. Just keep in mind you don't want to leave Lego sitting in water for too long. A couple hours isn't going to hurt anything, but you leave it in there a couple days, overnight. I had an issue once where I left Lego sitting in a tub of water, and all of the dirt that lifted off eventually settled back down in the water onto the Lego, and it somehow got more stuck on than it was before, and it roughed up all the pieces. I don't really know all the details of what happened, but I came back to a really it wasn't a really dirty lot, it was just the texture of the pieces were not what I wanted them to be. I tried washing them again, and it might be our hard water here too, that might be playing a role. So just kind of limiting factor here, want to move things through the water so that they're not sitting too long. Maximum 1 day in the water, they would probably still be fine. But other than that, I have a lot of flexibility in terms of how much of this I want to accomplish at a time, and can really break it down into stages. And I think I've talked long enough about cleaning Lego. So maybe 1 or 2 more of these. There's not too much more to say about the phase 2. It's just a lot of work. There's a lot of pieces here, and then start looking at the phase 3 sort and inventory for the job lot.